How to independently get rid of dependence on nasal drops in 7 days. Probably among your acquaintances, friends, or relatives, there are people who constantly use vasoconstrictor drugs, constantly carry them with them, and never part with them. Maybe you are among these people. That's why today I will tell you how you can get rid of this dependence, this problem, as comfortably and easily as possible, so that you can do it on your own. If among your acquaintances someone is dependent on vasoconstrictor drops, be sure to share this video with them so that these people can also get rid of this problem. In order for you to understand how the method we are going to talk about today works, I will briefly tell you about how our nose works and why dependence on nasal drops occurs. Our nose is a respiratory organ. The nose has a left and right half. They are separated from each other by a wall, which is called the nasal septum. On the sides of the nasal passages, there are nasal conchae, also known as turbinates, which run through the entire length of the nose from one side and through the entire length of the nose from the other side. These nasal conchae, they are covered with a mucous membrane capable of swelling several times. What is this needed for? On the one hand, the mucous membrane is swelling, the space in this half of the nose becomes less, the airflow decreases, and this half of the nose rests. Then on this side, the mucous membrane shrinks. On the other side, it swells, and the other half of the nose rests. This mechanism is also necessary to ensure the normal temperature of the inhaled air. When the air is cold, the mucous membrane swells and the air is additionally heated, so it enters the lungs at a normal temperature. In a dirty environment, this mechanism also works to prevent our lungs from being filled with dust and dirt. The mucous membrane swells and additionally holds dust and dirt. But in some situations, the tone of the nasal mucous membrane is disrupted and it swells on both sides. And it is at this moment that you begin to experience nasal congestion. When you start using vasoconstrictor drops for a long time, the nose forgets what a nasal cycle is, what it is to swell on one side, then on the other. He doesn't need to strain or think. You've dripped the drops, the mucous membrane has shrunk to your nose, and your body feels good. Didn't drip, swelling is happening, and then it all goes in a circle. Dripped again, and so on. That's why it's very important to refuse vasoconstrictive drops using a special technology, so that the nose remembers what proper nasal breathing and the correct nasal cycle are. The causes of vascular tone disturbance of the nasal mucosa can be a curvature of the nasal septum, which disrupts aerodynamics, and the nose gets tired of working in such a regime. This could be an allergy to inhaled air that causes chronic swelling of the nasal mucosa, which impairs nasal breathing. These could be inflammatory problems with the nasal sinuses that cause swelling of the mucosa and the need for vasoconstrictive drops. These could be peculiarities of sinus development, for example, the presence of pus in them, which presses on the wall and disrupts the work of the nose reflexively. Therefore, if you have a dependency on vasoconstrictive drops, in addition to the method we will discuss today, I recommend that you definitely undergo an examination for possible causes of your nasal breathing impairment. To remove the cause that causes nasal congestion and to remove this root of your problem, and very often such a thing happens. For example, a person has allergic rhinitis, we detected it, prescribed special treatment, and without any technology, the dependence on vasoconstrictive drops goes away. Therefore, even if you use the method we will talk about later and your nose works perfectly, I still recommend that you undergo an examination to protect yourself in the future from the occurrence of dependence on vasoconstrictive drops. You've probably noticed that in one room your nose breathes freely, in another room there is nasal congestion. And this is indeed the case, because the conditions of the environment greatly affect the work of our nose. First of all, it's the temperature of the surrounding air, its humidity, air pollution. As a rule, there is such a dependency. The drier the air, the worse the nose works. The higher the temperature of the surrounding air, the worse the nose works. The more polluted the surrounding air, the more the mucous membrane swells. All this exacerbates your dependence on vasoconstrictor drops. That's why I always recommend my patients to monitor the temperature, humidity, and cleanliness of the surrounding air. First and foremost, you can ensure these conditions in your home and in your houses. Make sure the temperature is 24 degrees Celsius. If it's heating season and the batteries are on, cover them to maintain the temperature within the norm. If the humidity is low, be sure to use a humidifier. All of this is very accessible now. If you have a dusty environment, if you don't like dusting at home, be sure to buy an air purifier which will clean it and improve the work of your nose. Try to at least take this step, and you will see that it's already easier to breathe through your nose and you need less vasoconstrictor drops. We don't always have the opportunity to create optimal conditions in our environment. In this situation, moisturizing the nasal mucosa with sprays with seawater or saline solution, which you can pour into almost any empty nasal spray bottle, will be suitable. Moisturize the nose twice daily, in the morning and evening. This will improve the work of the local immunity, reduce inflammatory changes in the mucous membrane, reduce the effect of allergens that get on the mucous membranes, and of course improve vascular tone. Thus, it will reduce the dependence on vasoconstrictor drops. My patients to whom I prescribe isotonic seawater solutions in the form of sprays or physiologic solution usually notice after a few days that their need for vasoconstrictor drops decreases. I recommend moisturizing the nose in the morning and evening. Put the little bottle next to the toothbrush, cleaned your teeth, moisturized your nose. 1 to 2 doses in each nostril, morning and evening for a whole month. As a rule, patients start to like this, and you can keep the nose moisturized on a regular basis, even all year round. There are preparations that have a reflex action. When inhaled, the mucous membrane of the nose shrinks and nasal breathing improves. That is, without vasoconstrictor agents, using reflex preparations, you can improve your nasal breathing and thus help yourself get rid of dependence. For example, these remedies can include the old Vietnamese balm, which is still sold. It needs to be applied not inside the nose, but next to the wings of the nose. Reflexively, as a rule, the mucous membrane begins to narrow due to the inhalation of menthol vapors. And this improves nasal breathing and helps us to give up vasoconstrictor drops. Among modern means possessing the same action, as well as a softening effect on the mucous membrane, there is evaminol ointment, which as a rule is sold in any pharmacy. You can apply this ointment directly to the mucous membrane of the nasal vestibule. Again, due to the reflex action of menthol and eucalyptus, the mucous membrane will decrease and nasal breathing will improve. My patients often use these remedies, thereby replacing vasoconstrictive drugs and easily getting rid of vasoconstrictive drops. Fortunately, unlike any heroin or nicotine addiction, we have the ability to reduce the dosage, and you can calmly adapt to this and gradually bring the concentration of the active substance practically to zero. I recommend my patients to switch either to children's vasoconstrictive drops from 2 to 6 years old first, and when the nose has already adapted to this and will work normally on these drops, switch to drops from 0 to 2 years old. You can also just unscrew your bottle, disassemble it, and dilute the vasoconstrictive drops 1-to-1 with boiled water. That is, gradually, if you reduce the concentration of vasoconstrictive agents, we can practically reduce this concentration to zero. And the most banal moisturizing of the nose with the help of seawater or saline will practically bring the same effect. Of course, as soon as you dilute the drops, it will practically not help you. In other words, the nose will clear, but poorly. But, as a rule, after a few days, the nose gets used to it and adapts, and this concentration will be enough. Use this concentration for a few days and dilute again. As a rule, this technology works, and you have the opportunity to gradually reduce the concentration of the vasoconstrictor agent. And when the time comes and when there is improvement, just take them and refuse altogether. Remember, I told you that we have a nasal cycle and the mucus swamp gets drunk from one side, then from the other. And when we refuse from vasoconstrictive drops, it's very important to do it correctly so that the nose remembers. And how is that? Normal nose function and a normal nasal cycle. That's why I always recommend using vasoconstrictive sprays alternately when you are refusing from them but still have to use them. You've blocked the nostril that breathes worse. You've sprayed a vasoconstrictor spray. You don't touch the other half. Usually, after 20 to 30 minutes, the other half of the nose starts to work better. And all this leads to the fact that nasal breathing is relieved and the nose breathes well. Next time, you can pinch the other half of the nose. That is, this technology will lead to the nose beginning to remember how to breathe correctly and work properly. It will remember what intermittent swelling of the mucous membrane is like. And ultimately, you will get rid of the dependency faster. Among the medications that help us rid patients of vasoconstrictive drops, there is a stick helper, so-called nasal steroids. These are preparations like Nasal, Avamis, Desronit, Tafen, and so on. There are many of them. They are typically available in pharmacies. These medications, they help us relieve chronic nasal congestion and improve nasal breathing. Even when using these remedies, for example, if there is some chronic allergic rhinitis and a superficial inflammatory process, it happens that after a few days of using these drugs, the need to use vasoconstrictive agents disappears, without any effort at all. But unfortunately, this is not about all patients. That is, if you don't have a surface burn, if you don't have allergic rhinitis, then these drugs may not help. In any case, if you have no contraindications, we usually prescribe these medications at the reception. Personally, I prescribe these drugs at 2 doses into each nostril twice a day for the first week. Starting from the second week, we switch to once a day in the morning and use these sprays for a whole month. If dryness occurs against their use or the nasal mucosa starts to bleed, then we definitely cancel these drugs. But if they bring us the long-awaited effect, then on average, somewhere in 5 to 7 days, you will feel that your nose breathes much better and the need for vasoconstrictive agents practically disappears. And at this moment, you need to endure a little and refuse from vasoconstrictive drugs. To alleviate nasal breathing during the period when you are refusing from vasoconstrictive drops, you can use breathing exercises which will improve your nasal breathing. And from the official medical recommendations that exist in Russia, you can use Postrelnikova's breathing exercises. You can get acquainted with it by reading the technology on the internet or in books. You can also watch videos on YouTube where specialists describe in detail how to do it correctly. The main point, which ensures nasal breathing, and the most important meaning I recorded for you in a special video. You can get acquainted with it by following this link. But with this endurance and part of the breathing gymnastics, according to Strelnikova, which I suggested for you in the above mentioned video, you can also get acquainted by following the link in the description to this video. You can use this technology in some extreme and fast situations. For example, when you are driving and your nose is blocked, or when you need to quickly restore nasal breathing. You don't have time to do breathing exercises in full, you can use my recommendations. But ideally, you should start by observing the necessary technique of all breathing gymnastics according to Strelnikova. Breathing gymnastics from yoga, which is called pranayama, will also do. In addition to improving nasal breathing, it also provides you with a charge of cheerfulness and energy. And if you already use my advice, which we discussed today, for more than 2 weeks, and the dependence on vasoconstrictor drops does not go away. Be sure to undergo an examination for a hidden allergy. For this, consult an allergist. Be sure to do a sinus X-ray, or better a computer tomography of the sinuses, to exclude triggering mechanisms from the side of the nasal sinuses. It is necessary to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor to assess the overall condition of the mucous membrane. There may be a bacterial inflammatory process going on, and we need a local antibacterial drug. If we don't find an allergy, if we don't find a problem with the nasal sinuses, if you have a straight nasal septum, then in addition to everything else, you need to see a neurologist, because you may have problems with the spine, impaired vascular function, and this all indirectly affects the autonomic nervous system and disrupts the regulation of your nose's work, which can lead to medicamentous rhinitis, to vasomotor rhinitis, which we are trying to get rid of. And there are situations where, for example, nothing helps a person. They ruled out allergy, ruled out problems with the nasal sinuses, sent the patient to a neurologist who in turn saw that there are problems, referred the patient to a manual therapist or osteopath, and after the spine, especially the cervical section, was properly treated, the nose also begins to work normally and no longer asks for vasoconstrictive drugs. Therefore, if my recommendations do not help you, do not give up, just move on, get examined, look for possible causes, and they are always there. And then you will get rid of the problem forever. Today, I shared with you a method that will help you comfortably get rid of dependence on vasoconstrictor drops. Don't forget to share this video with your acquaintances, friends, and relatives who are also dependent on vasoconstrictor drops. If you're interested in how you can further moisturize your nose if you're bothered by dryness, you can open this video. If you're interested in how to properly rinse your nose, especially for children, open this video. If for some reason you're not yet subscribed to my channel, be sure to subscribe. There's a lot more interesting and useful stuff ahead for you. Good day to you. See you. Goodbye.